We are stepping right onto the floor of the House Financial Services Committee. The date is January 24, 2026.
And the room is just packed. You can feel the tension.
It's a fundamental collision of worldviews on the American housing crisis.
Absolutely.
Before we really get into it, please take a quick second to like and subscribe. It helps us keep making these discussions for you.
All right, so let's set the scene.
The hearing is called Oversight of the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Federal Housing Administration.
But oversight doesn't really capture it. This was a battle over mission.
A battle between who, exactly?
On one side, you've got the new HUD Secretary, Scott Turner, representing the Trump administration.
And on the other?
The committee members. Chairman French Hill for the Republicans, Ranking Member Maxine Waters for the Democrats. You know, a real split.
And the central conflict seems to be, is the government's job to directly subsidize housing to enforce social protections?
Or is its job to just get out of the way, to dismantle what they're calling bureaucratic roadblocks and let the private market do its thing?
So that's the core question.
That's it. Secretary Turner and Chairman Hill, they framed this entire crisis, and everyone agrees it is a crisis, as a supply problem.
A supply problem caused by?
Regulations. Specifically, regulations from the previous administration. Their term for the solution is regulatory retrenchment.
Regulatory retrenchment. That sounds like a very polite way of saying we're cutting the rules.
It is, but it's targeted. The main vehicle for this is House Resolution 6644, the Housing for the 21st Century Act.
And what's in that act?
A huge piece of it is rolling back NEPA reviews. That's the National Environmental Policy Act.
Okay, so NEPA, that's usually about environmental impact. Will this building affect the wetlands, that sort of thing?
Correct. And the goal here is to expand what are called categorical exclusions, particularly for smaller construction projects.
Help us unpack that. What's a categorical exclusion?
It's essentially a regulatory shortcut. If your project fits the category, the government has already decided it won't have a significant environmental impact.
So you don't need to do the big multi-year study.
You can just start building. The administration says this saves a ton of time and, of course, a ton of money.
Which, on paper, sounds efficient. I mean, a fourplex probably shouldn't require a 3-year study.
But there's always a trade-off, right? When you cut regulations, quality or safety is often part of that conversation.
And that brings us to the debate on energy codes.
This is one of the sharpest exchanges of the day. The National Association of Home Builders testified that the new energy codes—
The 2021 standards.
Yes, the 2021 IECC standards. They said these add thousands to the cost of a home. They even had a specific data point.
Which was?
In Kansas City, they claimed these codes added up to $31,000 to the price of a single-family home.
$31,000. I mean, that's not a small number. For a first-time buyer, that's a deal breaker.
And that's exactly the Republican argument. These codes are pricing families out of the market.
But there was pushback on that.
Oh, yeah. Representative Foster came back hard. He argued, you're not actually saving money, you're just shifting the cost.
Pushing it into the future.
Exactly. Cheaper to buy, but way more expensive to live in.
Beginner utility bills are through the roof for the next 30 years.
Right. He brought up old public housing units built with no insulation. They were cheap to build, sure, but they became financial traps for residents who couldn't afford to heat them.
So it's the sticker price versus the total cost of ownership.
It's that classic debate. Pay now or pay more later.
There was another very specific rule that came up, something about a permanent chassis.
Yes, this was fascinating, a really technical point with huge implications. It's all about manufactured housing.
Okay.
So the rule right now is that a manufactured home has to be built on a steel frame with wheels, the chassis.
Even if it's going to be moved to a site, bolted to a foundation, and never move again.
Even then, it has to have that frame. Representative Rose compared it to an old, pointless NFL rule that just slows the game down.
And the argument is that this stifles innovation.
It does, because if you get rid of that chassis requirement, you can start building what they call missing middle housing duplexes, townhomes in a factory setting.
And then just transport and install them like a site-built house.
Exactly. The proponents say this could unlock a massive supply of affordable housing that's better than a traditional mobile home, but cheaper than building on site.
So cut environmental reviews, cut energy codes, change the manufacturing rules. That's the supply side strategy.
But that was only half the hearing. The other half was about fiscal accountability, or, to be blunt, about fraud.
And this centered on a big case in Minnesota.
A huge case. Secretary Turner and Representative Emmer talked about a $9 billion welfare fraud scheme statewide.
$9 billion is an astronomical figure.
Well, to be clear, that was across all welfare programs. For HUD specifically, they flagged about $85 million in fraudulent housing payments.
Still, $85 million. Where did that money go?
Some of it was just egregious. They found $500,000 paid out to residents who were already deceased,
Paid to dead people.
and another $250,000 to people with unverified Social Security numbers. It's just a broken system.
And when they highlight fraud like this in a hearing, it's never just about the accounting. It's to justify a policy shift.
You are absolutely right. Turner used this to justify a new, aggressive, boots-on-the-ground audit approach.
Auditing who?
Everyone in public housing, with a specific focus on undocumented immigrants. He cited a figure, which was heavily disputed, that 59% of illegal alien families use welfare programs, costing $42 billion a year.
And the other side, I assume, challenged that number?
They did, but they also challenged the method of fixing it. Representative Velasquez brought up the impact on mixed status families.
Walk us through what mixed status means here.
It's a household where some family members are citizens, maybe the kids were born here, but a parent, for example, is undocumented.
Okay.
The new rules would basically say that if there's an unauthorized person in the unit, the entire household could lose its housing assistance.
So the U.S. citizen children get evicted because of their parents' status.
That's the choice. Velasquez argued it forces families to either separate or face eviction together. She said it could explode the homelessness numbers.
Which brings us right to the next big topic of the hearing, homelessness itself.
And this huge philosophical shift away from housing first.
To something they're calling housing plus OS.
Right. It's a complete reversal. For the last decade, housing first has been the model. You give someone a stable home first because you can't get sober or find a job if you're sleeping in a park.
That seems to be the consensus approach, yeah. But Secretary Turner wants to flip that entirely.
He does. He's pushing housing pliesis, which is in House Resolution 5618. This model would mandate that funding only go to providers who require services.
Services like sobriety and job training as a condition of getting housing.
As a condition, yes. He made it very personal. He told a story about his late uncle, arguing that what his uncle needed was treatment, not just a key to an empty apartment.
His point being that just giving a key is warehousing someone in their addiction.
He believes true compassion requires intervention. And you can see why that argument would resonate with people.
But providers on the ground are not happy about this. Why not?
It creates a massive legal and logistical nightmare. Representative Caston brought this up.
How so?
Shifting the rules, this dramatically invites lawsuits. It violates existing contracts. So he warned that this could create a 6-month funding gap for providers while the courts sort it out.
A 6-month gap. A shelter can't operate for 6 months with no budget.
Exactly. Caston called it a potential death sentence. And not just for addicts. He mentioned people on oxygen tanks, people receiving chemotherapy who could lose their housing in that gap.
And what about seniors? The gray wave of homelessness is a real thing.
Representatives Presley and Pedersen raised that exact point. You have elderly people who are homeless simply because they can't afford rent. They don't need job training.
They just need a roof.
But if housing plies puts up all these service requirements as hurdles, you're making it harder for a 75-year-old to get a room.
It sounds like a very blunt instrument. And speaking of blunt instruments, let's talk about the personnel changes at HUD.
Ranking Member Waters called it a purge.
A purge. So what are the numbers?
Secretary Turner said 2,400 employees took a voluntary buyout program.
But the word voluntary is being disputed.
Heavily. Waters and Presley pointed to over 780 firings and argued that the agency is just bleeding institutional knowledge.
There were even specific names mentioned.
Representative Lee named 2 employees, Paul Hinian and Paula Cade, who were allegedly fired or put on leave for essentially doing their jobs.
Life was.
Trying to enforce the Violence Against Women Act and fair housing laws. The implication was clear. They were pushed out for being too aggressive on civil rights.
And how did Turner respond to this idea that HUD is backing away from civil rights enforcement?
He used a very, very specific and loaded phrase. He said HUD is investigating real discrimination, not phantom discrimination.
Phantom discrimination.
Yeah.
That says a lot.
It does. He defended withdrawing the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing rule, the AFFH, as a return to local control, but his opponents see it as abandoning civil rights.
And Representative Green really pushed him on this.
He did. He grilled Turner on his knowledge of testing.
Explain what testing is in this context.
It's an investigative tool. You send two people, say a black applicant and a white applicant with identical financial profiles, to apply for the same apartment.
A controlled experiment.
Right. And if they're treated differently, you have concrete evidence of discrimination. Green basically questioned if Turner even understood this basic methodology, implying that if you think it's all phantom, you're just not going to look for it.
So we've got these intense debates on regulation, fraud, homelessness, civil rights, but there's a contradiction at the heart of all this that I can't get past.
The labor issue.
The labor issue. And this point came from Republicans.
It did. Representatives Gonzalez and Salazar.
So the administration's plan is to boost housing supply. Build, build, build.
But you need people to do the building. And that's the conflict. They pointed out there's a huge labor shortage in construction.
And a huge percentage of those workers are immigrants.
About 1 in 3 nationally. So Gonzalez and Salazar's point was simple. You cannot solve a supply crisis if you are actively deporting the workforce that builds the supply.
It's like stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time.
That's the perfect way to put it. You can deregulate all you want, but if there's no one to hang the drywall, the house doesn't get built.
And while we're talking about building these houses, Representative Torres brought up some math on mortgages that was just chilling.
The 50-year mortgage.
I've heard of 30-year, maybe 40.
Could be.
But 50.
It was a very tense exchange. Torres pointed out that the average first-time homebuyer is now 40 years old.
Okay.
So if you give that person a 50-year mortgage to make the monthly payments affordable,
You're paying till you're 90.
if you even live that long. His argument was that this turns home ownership from an asset into a lifetime of debt. You'll likely die before you ever own it free and clear.
You're just a renter, but the bank is your landlord, and you pay for all the repairs.
And speaking of repairs, Torres also highlighted the needs of NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority. They need $80 billion for capital repairs.
$80 billion. And the allocation is?
About $800 million a year.
So, carry the one. That's a 100-year timeline to fix the problems that exist today.
It just shows the massive disconnect between the rhetoric of efficiency and the scale of the actual need on the ground.
So, after this marathon hearing, what happens next? What are the action items?
Legislatively, they're moving forward. They want to pass House Resolution 6644 for the deregulation and House Resolution 5618 for the housing PLOS requirement.
And administratively, HUD isn't waiting around.
No, they're proceeding with the audits of public housing agencies and continuing the shift to housing PLS despite the legal threats.
So a lot of people are feeling the impact of this. First-time buyers, renters, developers, the homeless.
It's a very wide net. Interestingly, the FHA insurance fund itself is financially healthy. The capital ratio is over 11%. So the system isn't broke.
It's a fight over philosophy.
It's purely about what the government's role should be. A market facilitator or a social protector. That's the divide.
Before we go, I just keep coming back to that labor contradiction.
The Gonzalez and Salazar point.
Yeah. It feels like the whole plan hinges on it. If the stated goal from everyone is to lower housing costs by building more.
But your immigration policy is aimed at removing the very workforce you need to do the building.
Can the supply ever actually catch up? It feels like you're just guaranteeing failure.
It's the potential unintended consequence of running two very different ideological plays at the exact same time. Something has to give.
A lot for you to think about. If you want to see the specific numbers on that 50-year mortgage or the full exchange on testing, we've linked the sources. Thanks for joining us.